I think you've described yourself, Jordan, as you've said, I think, that you're the surfer, not the wave. And I suppose I want to ask you, what is the wave? Because it seems to me we're at a moment of very great cultural potential, and it could go any number of ways, but that the very fact of what one might call the Jordan Peterson phenomenon, worldwide, your book translated into dozens of languages, your lecture halls packed, is a sign of a longing, a self-conscious longing for meaning. How would you describe what that wave is that you didn't create, but that you are speaking to?
Some of it's technological. So I would say that wave is got multiple levels. So we could start from, we'll start from, I would say, what's most obvious, and that would be the medium rather than the message. So I, and these people that I've been associated with, this intellectual dark web group, we're in the fortunate position of being early adopters of extraordinarily powerful technologies. So, and the technologies are twofold. There's online video, and then there's podcasts. And so they're technologically revolutionary in a variety of ways. So online video is revolutionary because it brings something closely akin to a live performance to an infinitely large number of people on demand permanently. So then you think, well, what's the advantage of a book? Well, it's permanent, it's relatively low cost, it's easily distributable, right? So, well, what's the advantage to online video? Well, it's inexpensive. It's not inexpensive, it's free. It's far easier to produce than a book. Like the lag time from video to publication is the day. Like we could put this online today instead of the 3-year lag that a book would require. And then far more people can watch and listen than can read. Because reading is a minority ability in some sense, really real expert level reading. You know that because such a tiny minority of people buy books, and people are made uncomfortable by books. They're intimidated by them, even if they have the intelligence in principle to do the reading. It's not part of their cultural milieu. That's a small minority of people. And so all of a sudden online video allows the spoken word to have the same impact as the written word, and that's deadly. That's a Gutenberg revolution. And then with podcasts, that's even magnified because you don't have to sit and watch a podcast. You can walk around, you can exercise, you can do the dishes, you can drive. Many people who come to my lectures are like long-haul truckers and guys who run forklifts, and they're in their machinery all day, and all they do is listen to podcasts. And so all of us, and they can listen to the podcasts because more people can listen than can read, and maybe way more people can listen than can read. We have no idea. Maybe the potential market is 10 times as big. And so they can do it when they want to. They can also do it in private. If you read and you're on a subway, people can tell you're reading. If you're sitting at home and reading, well, then you're with a book. And if you're uncomfortable with a book, you think that's pretentious or presumptuous or part of a class that you don't belong to or anything that makes you feel inferior, well, you can just circumvent that. You listen in private. And so people are taking that opportunity like mad. And so that's part of the wave, let's say, that technological revolution in communication that's illustrated that people have far more depth and capacity to concentrate than anyone would have imagined. You even see this with Netflix and HBO. It used to be on TV, there was an idea that, well, a movie was about as long as you could attract people's attention for. 90 minutes, that's the most the typical person could concentrate for. It's like, that turned out to be complete rubbish. People will follow these incredibly complex, like literary level narratives. Breaking Bad, for example, that has multiple characters following multiple streams of development for endless hours, and they'll binge watch it. So we have way more capacity for sustained concentration than we thought, and these new bandwidth unlimited technologies are revealing that to us. And I happen to be an early adopter of this, and so that's part one of the wave. And then there's the message part, and it has something to do with, see, our culture for a very long time has articulated out a right of rights. You have rights, you need to demand them, you need to claim them. It's like, but that's half the story, and it's not the most salutary half, because it turns out that the meaning in your life isn't the consequence of the claiming of rights. The rights are in some sense what other people owe you. I know there's more to it than that, but it's that in large part. Well, you can just get what you're owed. It's like, no, that's not where you're going to find your meaning. what you're going to find, where you're going to find your meaning is responsibility, which is the other half of the rights responsibility equation. And people don't know that. This is what would you call? This is the point where things come together properly. You need a meaning in your life to forestall the suffering and to make you strong enough to resist malevolence. Where's the meaning to be found? Rights, impulsive pleasure, and happiness. No. Responsibility. Oh, who would have guessed that? It's not part of the narrative. Because the responsibility narrative even is usually about duty or patriotism or something like that, which is okay, but it's an ideological narrative too in its own right. This is different. It's like, no, you don't understand, is that what makes life worth living is to pick up to take its catastrophe and embrace it and carry it and to realize through that process who you are. So one of the things I figured out in this lecture tour, there's this old idea that you go into the abyss. It's a Nietzschean idea that you can gaze into the abyss. You gaze long, and what you find in the abyss is a monster. Tolstoy wrote about that. That's the dragon at the bottom of the abyss, let's say. That's Satan himself, for that matter. But if you go into that as deeply as you can, what you find is you find your fragmented father in a comatose condition, in a desiccated and separated condition. And then you revivify that. Well, what does that mean? It means something. It means that if you look in the darkness, you find the light. That's one thing it means. And that the light really stands out against the darkness, but that the light is to be found in the darkness. So that's a very interesting thing. That's a quest narrative. But it means more than that. It means something fundamental. So we know, for example, that if you take yourself out of your current state of predictability and safety, and you put yourself in a new situation, you'll learn, right? You'll absorb, you'll incorporate new information. So that's a cognitive issue. But that isn't all that happens. What happens is that new genes turn on within you and code for the production of new proteins. And that happens neurologically. New parts of you turn on. And so the idea is that if you can move yourself out into the world and push yourself out against a maximum array of challenges, more and more of you turns on. And then the question would be, well, what would you be if all of you that could be turned on was turned on? And the answer would be, you would be the resurrection of the ancestral father. That's what you would be. And so that's why Christ says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. What that means is that if you take on the unbearable burden of being voluntarily, then that transforms you into the ancestral father. And that's true. And so that's unbelievably optimistic, because it's so interesting, because it's dark beyond belief, right? To say, well, the world is characterized by suffering and by malevolence of a depth that's virtually beyond comprehension. But if you choose to comprehend that, what you discover in that is the light that destroys the darkness. And that's really something to discover. It's the discovery that there isn't a discovery that's more profound than that. That's the search for the Holy Grail or the Philosopher's Stone, all of that.